Hello, I'm Bailey Leisure, and today on my channel I'm going to be recapping the games in this weekend's 2019-20 NFL Playoff Wildcard Weekend. And man, there were some great games, and it was really great to see four really good competitive games. Usually in the Wildcard Weekend we only have maybe one or two, but there was a lot that happened in those games. I'm going to recap. So the first game that took place was between the Houston Texans and the Buffalo Bills, as the Texans hosted the Bills. And this game, in the first half, it was mainly the Buffalo Bills. I mean, the Houston Texans couldn't really do anything on offense, and the Bills' defense did a great job containing DeAndre Hopkins and Deshaun Watson in that offense. Start off fast and furious for the Bills with that big run by Josh Allen, and then that big trick play from John Brown as he threw a touchdown pass to the quarterback Josh Allen, which was incredible. That was the first Buffalo Bills touchdown in a playoff game in well over 20 years. So, I mean, the way this first half was going, it definitely seemed like the Bills were going to dominate, and a reason I picked them. But I think it just came down to it. The second half was a completely different story for the Houston Texans. And, you know, it came down to quarterback play in this game, and a lot of playoff games that happens. And Deshaun Watson, he took over. I mean, he put up some amazing numbers and was able to. The Bills were up 16-0, and Houston, thanks to some great plays by Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins, they were able to get back in this game, and Josh Allen just struggled to do anything in the second half, and he made a lot of mistakes. He wasn't careful with the ball, and Deshaun Watson, he put up some impressive numbers in that second half. Overall, his stats were 20 of 25, 247 yards and just one touchdown, but he also had 55 rushing yards as well, and he just made some big plays. This game did go to overtime. I think the Texans were up 19-16 before the Bills were able to get down the field and kick a field goal and get this game to overtime. Both teams traded possessions in overtime, and then Deshaun Watson got the ball back a little late towards the end of the first overtime, and was able to make some plays, and he made that big play where he was able to get out of pressure and dump it off to his running back, Jones, if I'm saying that wrong. But he made that big play, able to set up for a game-winning field goal by the Houston Texans kicker, and the Houston Texans won this game 22-19. It definitely was a tough loss for the Buffalo Bills, but it proved why Deshaun Watson is one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL, and the Houston Texans fought back and won. And then the second game that took place on this Saturday, the same day as the Bills and the Texans game, was the other AFC wildcard matchup, as the New England Patriots hosted the Tennessee Titans. Like I said before in my preview video, this was the first time that the Patriots played in this wildcard round since 2009, in which they lost to the Baltimore Ravens at home. And I picked the Tennessee Titans to win. And, I think the big story in this game was New England struggling on offense. And they just couldn't really. I mean, Brady didn't put up terrible numbers, but their offense just lacked weapons and the oomph in their lineup that you've seen in previous years. And give the Tennessee Titans and Mike Vrabel credit, they were able to shut that down. They, exposed their big flaws in the playoffs. Ryan Tannehill did not have great numbers. He only threw 15 passes in this game for 72 yards. But the big story in this game was Derrick Henry, and the fact that, even though the Patriots held the Tennessee Titans to just 14 points, they could not stop Derrick Henry, as he really controlled the game. He put up big numbers in the running game, and really the Houston Texans just managed this game, much better than the Patriots did. Mike Vrabel did a great job against his. It was kind of like the master being defeated by the apprentice, and that's what happened in this game. He just controlled the clock. The Titans had, I think, 2 drives in the fourth quarter that ran off so much clock, and the defense were able to make the stops when the Patriots had the ball. I think it was 20-13, or excuse me, it was 14-13. The Patriots got the ball back with less than 30 seconds left. The Tennessee Titans were able to get off after a great punt by their punter. They were able to back them up all the way inside the one, where Brady threw a pass trying to get it into field goal range, and it was picked off by former Patriot Logan Ryan, which pretty much sealed the game as the Tennessee Titans upset the New England Patriots. And I know a lot of people are calling this a monumentous upset for the Tennessee Titans, but I picked them in this game, and they proved why. And it was just proven because of the Patriots' flaws and the fact that they just could not contain Derrick Henry. But you got to give Mike Vrabel credit. I feel like people are talking more about the Patriots missteps in this game than what the Titans did, and I have to give the Tennessee Titans a lot of credit by Mike Vrabel, Derrick Henry, that defense, and the rest of that team for winning this game in Foxborough. So now, definitely the big question for the New England Patriots is, where do they go from here? Brady's getting older. Was this the end of the dynasty that the Patriots have had for almost 20 years? Brady's going to be a free agent, and they could have re-signed him if they wanted to keep him, but the way it's going, who knows what's going to happen? Belichick, we heard about, a couple years ago when Jimmy Garoppolo was traded that Bill Belichick wanted to keep him, but that did not happen as they traded him to the San Francisco 49ers, and the 49ers are, looking like Super Bowl contenders right now. But we look at what happens. Brady says after the game, he did a post-game interview, and he says his retirement is unlikely for him. He could retire. And if I was, New England, if I was Tom Brady, he's got nothing left to prove, but he still has that competitiveness to want to keep playing. He doesn't want to go out on that. So if I had to take a guess, and this is my personal opinion, I think Tom Brady will play in 2020, but I think and this might sound nuts, but I think it's going to probably be for another team. There's a lot of teams that could be looking for quarterbacks like the Chargers or, maybe several others, but if I had to take a guess, I think Belichick wants to keep coaching, and he wants to get that, that next young quarterback wherever he gets it, as he still wants to compete. And the Patriots really need to rebuild their offense, and this might be the season where it's time to, look towards the future. Now we move on to the Sunday matchups, the NFC Sunday that happened in the wild card week. And the first game we had was the Vikings and the Saints. The Saints came in this game at home as heavy favorites against the Minnesota Vikings. And the way this game started off after the Thielen fumble on the Vikings' first drive, I was just thinking, here it comes. The Saints are going to get off to that fast start, and they were going to take over, but they only got a field goal. And you know what? This game, the Vikings, they played very competitive in this game. They truly did. Kirk Cousins wasn't great, but he made the plays he needed to make, and Dalvin Cook had a great game as he had 94 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had a couple catches for nearly 40 yards, so he had a big game in this game. And I think the big story in this game was that the offensive weapons for the New Orleans Saints, the big ones, Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, did not have great games, or at least did not go off the way that people expected them to be, because the Vikings defense had a great game plan. Everson Griffin and that defensive line for the Vikings put pressure on Drew Brees. They made a team that set the record, I think, in the regular season for the least amount of turnovers in a season, and Drew Brees threw a bad interception. The Saints had a chance to tie the game up in the fourth quarter before they ended up tying it up to send the game to overtime, but they had a chance to tie it up, and Drew Brees fumbled that ball, thanks to a great pressure of the Vikings defense. The only player that they really gave up big plays to was Taysom Hill, but, we look at the stats for the Saints. Drew Brees didn't have a great game, 26 out of 30, only 208 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception in that fumble. Alvin Kamara only ran for 21 yards. Michael Thomas caught 7 passes, but for only 70 yards. The Vikings just had a great game plan when it came to stopping their main targets. Kirk Cousins made the plays that he needed to make as well. I think a big play that not a lot of people are talking about was that missed field goal before halftime by Will Lutz. That was a huge missed field goal in this game that that definitely really mattered, because had he made that field goal attempt, momentum changes in the game, and who knows if they would have been in that position. But let's just say everything else happens the way that it happened in that game. If he makes that field goal, Lutz, that field goal he was going for at the end of towards the end of regulation would have been the game-winning field goal. So that was definitely a costly missed field goal. This game went to overtime. The Vikings got the ball first, and they took advantage of it. He was able to convert. Kirk Cousins made some big plays, including that huge pass play to Adam Thielen that set them up inside the 5 at the 2. It was 3rd down and goal. He threw a fade pass to Kyle Rudolph. There was a little bit of pushover, and there's definitely the controversy if it was offensive pass interference, but it wasn't reviewed. Rudolph caught the touchdown, and the Vikings pulled off the upset, and 26-20, they're going on to the division round. The Saints, who were, in my opinion, looking like the Super Bowl contenders in the NFC, despite being the 3rd seed, are eliminated, and big upset win for the Vikings, but for the third consecutive year, the Saints have suffered a really devastating playoff loss. And that one's going to sting once again for them. And now we move on to the final game in the wild card round between the Seattle Seahawks and the Philadelphia Eagles. And both teams were definitely coming into this game, very injured. Although I would definitely say the Eagles were a lot more injured than the Seahawks. This game started off pretty close. This first quarter was a little bit sluggish. But I think the big play that happened early in this game that changed the whole game was Carson Wentz getting injured and was out for the remaining of the game early in the first quarter after he was sliding down and he was hit by Jadeveon Clowney, which was not called a penalty flag. And I know a lot of people try to make the case he wasn't targeting him. I call that BS. I mean, even if it wasn't targeting, it was a helmet-to-helmet hit. That was ridiculous. I mean, if that's college football, I know it's not, it's the NFL, but that's college football, that's called targeting, and Jadeveon Clowney's tossed from the game. I think it was ridiculous, but I'm not saying that, I think Seattle probably still would have won, even with Carson Wentz, but that definitely took the Eagles any chance of them winning this game. They just, they didn't have that. But they fought on. Josh McCown, the backup quarterback for the Eagles. Unfortunately, the Eagles did not have Nick Foles to save him this time. But McCown came in as a 40-year-old quarterback who retired and then came out of retirement to sign a backup job with the Philadelphia Eagles. This was the first playoff game in his entire career. And you know what? He played all right. I mean, but I think the big thing for the Eagles was, they were able to move the ball, but unfortunately, they just could not get in the end zone. That was the big story. Russell Wilson threw over 300 yards. I mean, the Seahawks, in my opinion, should have won this game by a lot more, especially after the Carson Wentz injury. But I think the big story in this game was the plays on offense that Russell Wilson was able to make to DK Metcalf as he went off on this game. 7 catches, 160 yards, including that big touchdown that he had at the beginning of the second half. I mean, once they got in the end zone, I was thinking, well, I think the Seahawks just kind of won in a way. But the Eagles, they were able to keep themselves in this game. But I think just all the injuries caught up to the Eagles. The injuries. I know you have to have that next man up mentality. But when your injuries are happening at every main position, your wide receivers, your offensive linemen, your quarterback, your defense, I think it was just too much to bear for the Eagles. And unfortunately, they just couldn't overcome that. They played really competitive, and I don't think they have any, the position with all the injuries that they had. I think it's probably a big victory that they just even made the playoffs, although they definitely kind of underachieved as well. But unfortunately for the Eagles, they just couldn't overcome that. I think the Seahawks had the ball after the Eagles went, turnover on downs, trying to get into the end zone. Russell Wilson made that big pass to DK Metcalf, and they were able to run the clock out. And the Seahawks came away with the victory in this game, 17-9. And those were my thoughts on the 2019-20 NFL Playoff Wildcard Round weekend. What were your thoughts on the game? What did you think about some of the calls, some of the games? I mean, we saw some really good games this weekend. Stay tuned in a few days, just prior to next weekend's divisional round starting. I will give my playoff game predictions in those games, so check out for that in a couple days. So as always, follow me on Twitter @Laser96 and click like if you liked the video. So thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you in my divisional round predictions video.